Rejection isn't just a word. It's the invisible chain around most people's necks. Niccolo Machiavelli would whisper, "Break that chain, and the world bends to you." Right now, somewhere in America, a college kid won't ask his crush to grab coffee because he fears she'll say no. A middle manager in Chicago stays silent in a meeting because the senior VP might disagree. An entrepreneur in Austin keeps his idea locked in a notebook because investors might laugh. All of them are prisoners. And their prison guard? The fear of rejection. But here's the twist. Rejection isn't your enemy. It's your weapon. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how Machiavelli's dark psychology transforms rejection into raw power. Before we dive in, comment below. I break the chain. Part 1. The psychological trap of rejection. Rejection. It's one of the most ordinary words in the English language, and yet, for most people, it secretly dictates their entire existence. They wake up every day thinking they are free. Free to choose, free to act, free to chase their desires. But if you look closely, you'll see that invisible chain coiled around their neck. That chain has a name: the fear of rejection. Modern neuroscience reveals a brutal truth. When you're rejected, whether it's a job application ignored, a date turned down, or even a friend brushing off your idea, your brain lights up in the exact same region that processes physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex doesn't care whether you've been punched in the stomach or told no by your boss. To your brain, the hurt is the same. This was once a survival mechanism. Thousands of years ago, if your tribe rejected you, it meant isolation, starvation, and death in the wilderness. Being excluded wasn't just embarrassing, it was fatal. So your brain evolved to treat rejection as a life-threatening emergency. But here's the Machiavellian twist. You're no longer living in caves. You're not depending on a tribe of 30 hunters and gatherers to keep you alive. You're living in a modern world where opportunities multiply by the day, where survival doesn't depend on universal approval. And yet that ancient alarm system still rules you. It tells you, stay quiet, stay safe. Don't risk hearing no. Think about your own life. Every major decision you didn't make probably traces back to this trap. The college graduate in Boston who never applied to his dream job at Google because he couldn't bear the thought of being rejected. The single mother in Atlanta who never spoke up about her business idea because she worried investors might laugh. The high school quarterback in Texas who never told the girl he liked how he really felt because he feared embarrassment in front of his friends. Each one of them is living a smaller life than they could because the possibility of rejection felt more terrifying than the certainty of regret. This is why rejection is more than just a feeling. It's a psychological prison. You can almost imagine the bars forming every time you back away from a risk. The cell door slams shut when you tell yourself, better not try, better play it safe. And here's the dark irony. The people who already hold power, the bosses, the gatekeepers, the influencers, love this prison. They love that you're afraid of their no, because that fear gives them control. When you're terrified of rejection, you become predictable. You soften your voice in meetings so you don't get challenged. You water down your opinions so nobody feels offended. You lower your standards in relationships so you won't be left alone. And when you do that long enough, you slowly fade into the background. You don't lead. You don't inspire. You don't command respect. You exist only as a follower, safe, small, invisible. Need proof? Look around your office. Who gets noticed in meetings? Is it the cautious worker who says what everyone else is thinking? Or is it the one bold enough to risk disagreement, even ridicule? The answer is obvious. Respect is rarely given to the agreeable. It's given to those who speak without fear. The trap gets worse, because fear of rejection creates a vicious cycle. The more you avoid it, the needier you become. And desperation has a scent. People can smell it before you even speak. The man who floods a woman's phone with 20 texts in a day, terrified of silence, repels her faster than if he'd said nothing at all. The salesman in Los Angeles who practically begs a customer to buy makes them run to another store. The employee in Chicago who constantly nods along with the boss, hoping for approval, is the one who never gets promoted. Rejection avoidance doesn't protect you. It marks you as weak, and weakness invites exactly what you fear most: more rejection. Now compare this with the people you respect most. Do they beg for attention? Do they twist themselves into pretzels just to be liked? Do they dilute their identity so no one can possibly be offended? No. The people you admire, whether it's the coach who tells hard truths, the CEO who makes unpopular decisions, or even the classmate who walks confidently into any room, have something in common. They're unbothered by whether you accept them or not. And because rejection doesn't scare them, it loses all power over them. Here's the cold reality. If you let rejection rule you, you'll never rule anything else. You'll always be the one adjusting, compromising, shrinking. You'll think you're avoiding pain, but really, you're just avoiding life. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he wrote about rulers keeping people on a leash of fear. In your life, rejection is that leash. Every time you back away from risk, you tighten the collar around your own throat. But the leash can be broken. It starts the moment you see rejection, not as a death sentence, but as a test. Not as the end of your worth, but as proof that you dared. Imagine if you treated every no like a stepping stone instead of a wall. Imagine if, instead of shrinking, you grew stronger each time someone turned you down. How much freer would you be? How much bigger would you live? That is the psychological trap of rejection. Most people stay in it their entire lives. The ones who break out, those are the ones who become unforgettable. So let me ask you right now, what's one opportunity you passed on because you feared rejection? Write it in the comments, not as shame, but as your first step toward breaking the chain. Part 2. Machiavelli's perspective on rejection. Niccolò Machiavelli lived in a world of daggers, betrayals, and fragile alliances. Renaissance Florence was not a kind place. It was a battlefield of power, where one wrong move could exile you, or worse, kill you. In such a world, Machiavelli observed something most people still deny today. A man ruled by fear of rejection can never hold real power. Why? Because the desire to be accepted by everyone is the most dangerous addiction of all. In The Prince, Machiavelli wrote the words that continue to shock even now. Since love and fear can hardly exist together, if we must choose between them, it is far safer to be feared than loved. To modern ears, this sounds harsh, but beneath it lies a truth that shapes every workplace, every relationship, and every community in America today. Let's break it down. If your highest priority is to be loved, to be accepted, you will avoid anything that risks rejection. You won't speak uncomfortable truths. You won't make unpopular decisions. You won't take bold actions, and by trying to please everyone, you end up respected by no one. Look at history's power players. Julius Caesar knew the Roman Senate might reject him when he crossed the Rubicon. He marched anyway. That single act of boldness cemented his name for centuries. Steve Jobs faced the humiliation of being fired from Apple, the very company he founded. Lesser men would have retreated into obscurity. Jobs returned, unapologetically bold, and built an empire that reshaped the world. But rejection isn't just for emperors and tech giants. Think about Oprah Winfrey. In Baltimore, a producer told her she was unfit for television. That was rejection in its purest form. But instead of shrinking, she leaned into her uniqueness. Today, she is one of the most influential women on the planet. Not because she avoided rejection, but because she was willing to walk through it. Here's the Machiavellian point. Rejection is not a verdict. It's intelligence. It tells you what others fear, what they value, what they cannot see. And for a strategic mind, that information is priceless. But most people misinterpret rejection. They take it as a statement of personal worth. I wasn't chosen, therefore I'm not good enough. Machiavelli would scoff at this. He'd say, "No, you simply misjudged the audience." Adjust your strategy, but never let their rejection shrink your ambition. Consider this in a modern American office. Imagine a young analyst in New York who proposes a bold new system in front of senior management. They dismiss her. A timid person would retreat, vow never to risk again. But a Machiavellian thinker would log that rejection as data. Perhaps the timing was off. Perhaps the audience felt threatened. Perhaps the pitch lacked political allies. She would regroup, reframe, and present again when the moment is right. This is why Machiavelli's advice remains brutally relevant. He wasn't telling leaders to seek cruelty or tyranny. He was telling them that rejection, whether from rivals, peers, or the crowd, cannot be the force that shapes their decisions. Because if you are controlled by rejection, then whoever has the power to reject you controls your destiny. Think about American politics. The leaders who dominate headlines are rarely the ones begging for universal approval. They are the ones willing to risk being hated by some in order to command respect from many. Their rejection rate is sky high, but so is their influence. Whether you agree with their policies or not, the principle is the same. Rejection is the cost of visibility, and only those willing to pay it rise to the top. Now let's bring this closer to daily life. In relationships, if you constantly fear being rejected, you become a servant to the other person's moods. You stop saying what you really feel. You mold yourself into whatever you think they'll like. And over time, they lose respect. Why? Because respect is never given to the person who grovels for it. It's given to the person strong enough to risk losing it. The same is true in business. If you're pitching an idea to investors in Silicon Valley and you're desperate for their approval, they'll smell it instantly. They'll see that fear in your eyes and know they can control you. But if you present your vision with authority, fully aware that they may say no, you shift the dynamic. Their rejection no longer diminishes you. It simply reveals whether they are capable of recognizing value. Here's what Machiavelli understood better than anyone. Rejection is not a wall. It's a mirror. It shows you who has vision and who doesn't, who has courage and who cowers, who can think beyond the crowd and who is trapped by it. The powerful don't avoid mirrors. They use them. So the next time someone rejects you, Don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask instead, "What does this rejection reveal about them, and how can I use it?" That single reframe changes rejection from a wound into a weapon. Because when you no longer fear rejection, you no longer play defense. You play offense. You stop waiting for permission. You stop performing for applause. And you start living with the clarity that comes only when rejection loses its sting. Now, I want you to take a moment. Think back to the last time you were rejected. A job, a date, an idea, a friendship. Did it crush you, or did it redirect you? In hindsight, was it truly the end, or was it information that pushed you somewhere else? Share your story in the comments. Tell us about one rejection that secretly helped you. You'll be surprised how many others see themselves in your experience. That's Machiavelli's perspective. The weak avoid rejection, the strong walk straight into it, and the truly powerful turn it into fuel. Part 3. Rejection as Power. Dark Psychology Insight. Most people see rejection as the end. They think, "She said no, so I'm not attractive. The company passed on my resume, so I'm not qualified. The investor didn't fund me, so my idea must be worthless." This is the common lie. But Machiavelli would laugh. Because in truth, rejection is not proof of weakness. It's proof of movement. It's proof you dared. It's proof you played a game most others never had the courage to enter. Think about it this way. Who gets rejected more often? The safe and visible man who never speaks up, or the one who takes bold swings? The student who hides in the back of the classroom, or the one who challenges the professor in front of 200 people? The worker in Kansas City who just follows instructions, or the one who pitches a risky idea to the CEO? The answer is obvious. The one who risks the most faces the most rejection, and yet they also unlock the biggest rewards. Take Walt Disney. Early in his career, he was told he lacked imagination. Imagine that. The man who would build an empire of dreams rejected as unimaginative. Or Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team. He didn't collapse. He turned that rejection into fire. Or think of Colonel Sanders, rejected over 1,000 times before someone finally agreed to franchise Kentucky Fried Chicken. Rejection wasn't their enemy. It was their training ground. This is what psychologists now call desensitization, exposure therapy. The more you face rejection, the less it hurts, and the stronger you become. Each no is like a weight in the gym. Lift it enough times, and rejection stops being heavy. It becomes routine. But there's a darker layer to this, because once you stop fearing rejection, something strange happens. People begin chasing you instead. Consider relationships. The man who is desperate for approval, texting constantly, adjusting his every word to please her, drives women away. But the man who doesn't fear rejection, who can walk away at any moment, suddenly becomes magnetic. Why? Because human psychology is wired in reverse. We want what doesn't need us. We chase what is scarce. We value what isn't desperate for our attention. This isn't limited to romance. It happens everywhere. In business, the consultant in San Francisco who rejects half the clients who approach him doesn't lose power. He gains it. People begin to think, if he's turning people away, his services must be worth even more. In politics, the candidate who boldly states unpopular truths may be rejected by some voters, but they gain a deeper, fiercer loyalty from others. Rejection, when embraced, flips the power dynamic. Instead of you fearing their no, they begin fearing yours. Think about that. Imagine a world where you are not terrified of people rejecting you, but they are terrified of you rejecting them. Imagine being in a job interview and thinking, "I'm not here begging for this position. I'm here to decide if this company deserves me." Imagine dating from a place of abundance, where you're not crushed if she says no, because you know your value doesn't depend on her yes. Imagine pitching investors and recognizing that rejection says more about their vision than your worth. That shift alone is enough to change your life, because rejection is no longer a wall. It becomes a filter. It filters out the wrong opportunities, the wrong people, the wrong timing. It saves you from wasting your energy on those who don't deserve it. And here's where the Machiavellian insight cuts deepest. You don't even need to be truly fearless. You only need to appear fearless. Because people don't judge you by your internal emotions. They judge you by what you project. Machiavelli himself said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see, and few can feel." In other words, people don't know if rejection secretly stings you. They only know how you carry yourself afterward. If you carry rejection like a king brushing dust off his shoulder, they assume you must have other options, hidden resources, untouchable strength. This assumption alone gives you power. The appearance of indifference creates respect, curiosity, even desire. Others begin to ask themselves, "Why doesn't this person care? What do they know that I don't? What do they have that makes them so secure?" That curiosity becomes attraction. That attraction becomes influence. And influence is the seed of power. Meanwhile, the masses remain emotional slaves. Someone rejects them, and they spiral, begging for attention, questioning their worth, altering their behavior. They collapse into desperation. And desperation, as we said earlier, has a smell. People recoil from it. But the powerful? They feel rejection and keep moving. They feel the sting but don't let it write their story. They take rejection as information, not as a verdict. They turn rejection into a habit until rejection itself has no power over them. This is the secret that separates the rulers from the ruled. Not who avoids rejection, but who weaponizes it. So ask yourself, what if every rejection you faced wasn't a wound, but a workout? What if every no you've collected wasn't proof of weakness, but proof that you're living at the edge of your potential? Here's your challenge. In the next 7 days, deliberately put yourself in situations where rejection is likely. Ask for the raise, pitch the bold idea, approach the stranger, collect the numbers, then come back here and comment, "Rejection makes me stronger." That's how rejection becomes not just survivable, but powerful. That's how you turn no into your most dangerous weapon. Part 4. Practical Machiavellian Tactics. Up to this point, you've seen the trap of rejection and the Machiavellian perspective that flips it into power. But knowledge without tactics is useless. Machiavelli wasn't a philosopher of theory. He was a strategist of survival. He believed in actionable moves, the kind that shift perception and carve power in the real world. So how do you take rejection and use it like a weapon? Here are 4 Machiavellian rules you can practice right now. Rule number 1. Expect rejection, never beg acceptance. Most people enter situations hoping for a yes, terrified of a no. And when the no arrives, they crumble. But what if you walked in expecting it? Imagine you're in Houston asking for a raise. The average employee apologizes before even starting. "I know it's not a great time, but I was wondering if maybe, possibly." That approach screams weakness. It tells your boss you don't believe in your own value. Now flip the script. You walk in fully expecting rejection, not because you want it, but because you've made peace with it. You state your case clearly. Here's the value I've created. Here's the revenue I've helped bring in. Here's why I deserve this raise. Then you let the chips fall. One of two things will happen. Either you get the raise, or you don't. But in both cases, you stand taller. You prove you can face rejection without losing composure. And that composure alone increases respect, because most people beg. Leaders never beg. Rule number 2, use rejection strategically. This one flips the entire psychology of rejection on its head, because sometimes the most powerful move is to reject them. Look at exclusive restaurants in New York City with 6-month waiting lists. They don't beg customers to come. Customers beg for a reservation. Why? Scarcity. Selectivity. Rejection is branding. Now apply that to your life. A consultant in San Francisco once doubled his rates overnight. He began turning away half the clients who wanted his services. Within months, his demand exploded. Why? Because people assumed, if he's rejecting us, he must be worth even more. The same is true in relationships. If you're always available, always saying yes, your time becomes cheap. But if you reject low-effort invitations, if you decline disrespectful treatment, your yes becomes priceless. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves." In other words, sometimes power lies in saying, "No, reject strategically," and your acceptance becomes an honor. Rule number 3, display boldness. Most people hide from rejection like children hiding from monsters under the bed, but boldness itself is magnetic. Picture this. A young lawyer in Chicago is in a meeting with senior partners. Everyone else plays it safe, nodding along. She, however, challenges the dominant opinion, knowing full well they might dismiss her. That boldness doesn't always earn immediate approval, but it plants a seed of respect. She dared, and over time, those who dared become the ones who rise. Machiavelli warned against living in fantasies of what might happen. He said, "The one who neglects what is done for what ought to be done sooner affects his ruin than his preservation." Translation: stop waiting for guarantees. Say what needs to be said. Make the ask. Swing the bat. Boldness may invite rejection, but it also invites attention, respect, and opportunity. And in a society where most people play small, boldness itself becomes a brand. Rule number 4, control the frame. This is the most powerful reframe of all. Rejection reflects them, not you. Think about Silicon Valley. Venture capitalists rejected Airbnb dozens of times. Did that mean the idea was worthless? Or did it mean those investors couldn't see the future? Today, the investors who said no look foolish. The rejection reflected their blindness, not the founder's vision. When someone rejects you, they're not making a divine judgment about your worth. They're making a decision filtered through their own fears, biases, and limitations. A woman turning you down doesn't prove you're undesirable. It proves she doesn't see what you bring. A boss dismissing your idea doesn't prove it's bad. It proves he isn't ready for it. This is why you must control the frame. Don't let their no define you. Let it define them. Because the truth is, most people reject from ignorance, not from insight. And when you hold that frame, rejection loses its sting. You stop asking, "Am I enough?" and start asking, can they recognize value when it's in front of them? That shift alone changes how you walk through the world. The Machiavellian edge. Follow these 4 rules and you'll notice something. Rejection stops being the monster under the bed. It becomes a tool, a currency, a filter. Expect rejection, and it never surprises you. Reject strategically, and your value multiplies. Display boldness, and you stand apart. Control the frame, and rejection turns into information, not humiliation. This is how dark psychology becomes practical strategy. Not abstract philosophy, but moves you can make today, tomorrow, this week. So here's your action step. Pick one of these rules and apply it in the next 48 hours. Whether it's asking boldly, rejecting strategically, or reframing a no you just received, put it into practice. Then come back and tell us what happened. Write in the comments, "This is the rule I'm testing this week," and share your experience, because power doesn't come from hearing these rules. It comes from living them. Part 5. Ruling through fearlessness. Machiavelli's sharpest insight wasn't about armies or kingdoms. It was about fear. Not just the fear rulers inspired, but the fear that ruled ordinary people. He saw clearly. The one who fears no rejection cannot be controlled. Think about that for a moment. Most people live as prisoners of what if. What if my boss says no? What if she doesn't like me? What if I fail? They adjust every move, every decision, every word to avoid rejection. And in doing so, they hand control of their lives to others. But those who rule, whether in politics, business, or relationships, operate differently. They are not fearless because rejection never comes. They are fearless because rejection doesn't stop them. Fearless in the workplace. In corporate America, fear of rejection keeps millions silent. A middle manager in Chicago has an idea that could save his company millions, but he never speaks because the senior VP might dismiss him. He chooses safety. But in that silence, his career stays invisible. Contrast that with the fearless worker, the one who stands in a boardroom, voices a risky idea, and risks laughter or rejection. Sometimes the idea is dismissed, but sometimes it changes the entire direction of the company. And either way, the one who dared earns respect, because rejection doesn't crush him, it sharpens him. Fearless in relationships. In dating, fear of rejection is poison. A man in Los Angeles changes everything about himself to win approval, texting too often, bending his opinions, suppressing his truth. He thinks this will keep her. Instead, she loses interest. Why? Because desperation isn't attractive. Now picture a different man. He says what he believes. He risks being misunderstood. He risks being told no. And because he can walk away, he commands respect. She senses he isn't ruled by her approval. That independence is intoxicating. Fearless people aren't immune to rejection. They simply refuse to hand over their self-worth to someone else's decision. And that refusal flips the power dynamic. Fearless in business. Look at entrepreneurs. Most ideas in Silicon Valley are laughed at in the beginning. Airbnb, Uber, even Tesla were ridiculed. But founders pressed forward anyway, knowing rejection was part of the price. Fearful entrepreneurs collapse at the first investor's no. Fearless entrepreneurs collect no's like currency, knowing each one brings them closer to the yes that matters. That's why fearless founders change industries, while fearful ones remain stuck in safe jobs they hate. Fearless in politics and leadership. In American politics, leaders who dominate the stage are rarely those who crave universal approval. They are the ones willing to risk hatred, willing to face rejection from half the country in order to lead the other half with conviction. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. Rulers who try to please everyone lose power quickly. Leaders who accept rejection as inevitable and act boldly anyway endure. Fearlessness doesn't mean recklessness, it means clarity. It means seeing rejection as part of the process, not as a threat to survival. Why fearlessness rules? Here's the core truth. Fear of rejection makes you predictable. Predictable people are easy to control. Fearless people are impossible to cage. When you don't fear rejection, you apply for jobs others think you're unqualified for. You start businesses others say will fail. You state opinions others are too timid to voice. You live in a way that forces people to respect you, even if they don't always agree with you. This is why the fearless rise. While the masses avoid risk, they seize opportunities. While the crowd waits for permission, they take action. While others beg for approval, they create results that make approval irrelevant. And here's the paradox. The more fearless you are, the less rejection you actually face. Because when people sense you aren't afraid of their disapproval, they stop wielding it as a weapon. They realize their no doesn't control you. And suddenly, their yes becomes desperate. The Machiavellian lesson. Fearlessness is the ultimate weapon because it destroys the only leash society has on you, the fear of rejection. This doesn't mean you'll never feel afraid. Fear is natural, but courage is acting anyway. Machiavelli didn't advise leaders to be heartless. He advised them to be untouchable, to move through criticism, through dismissal, through hatred, without losing momentum. The fearless man doesn't live a life free of rejection. He lives a life where rejection has no power, and that makes him unstoppable. So here's my question for you. Where in your life is fear of rejection still controlling you? Is it in your career, your relationships, your dreams? Drop your answer in the comments. Not to confess weakness, but to declare where you're ready to break free. Because when you stop fearing rejection, you stop living small. You stop waiting for others to choose you, and you start choosing yourself. That is how the fearless rule. Part 6. Closing. Stop fearing rejection. Start ruling. You've walked through the prison of rejection. You've seen how fear makes people small, how Machiavelli's perspective exposes rejection as a tool of control, how the bold flip rejection into power, and how practical tactics turn it into a weapon. And finally, you've seen that fearlessness itself is the highest form of freedom. So now the question is simple. Where does this leave you? The harsh truth. Most people will listen to everything we've covered and do nothing. They'll nod along, maybe even comment, maybe even feel inspired for an hour. And then they'll go back to their default programming. They'll keep avoiding the job they want because they're terrified of a no. They'll keep editing themselves in relationships, terrified of rejection. They'll keep shrinking in meetings, terrified of being dismissed. And 10 years from now, they'll wonder why they feel invisible. But Machiavelli's lesson doesn't wait. The leash of rejection tightens every day you choose comfort over courage. If you don't break it, you will die with it around your neck. Not physically, but spiritually, buried under regrets of all the risks you never took. The reframe. Here's the liberating truth. Rejection isn't an enemy, it's a filter. When an employer rejects you, it filters out a workplace that never valued you. When a partner rejects you, it filters out a relationship that wouldn't have respected you. When investors reject your vision, it filters out people too blind to see the future. Rejection doesn't close doors. It shows you which ones were never yours to open in the first place. American stories of rejection. This truth is everywhere once you start looking. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript was rejected by a dozen publishers before one finally said yes. Today, it's a billion-dollar franchise. The rejections weren't proof she was worthless. They were proof most publishers lacked imagination. Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks, was turned down by over 200 investors when pitching his coffeehouse vision. Imagine if he had taken those rejections as the end. There would be no Starbucks on every corner in America. Even in politics, Abraham Lincoln faced rejection after rejection. Business failures, electoral defeats, even a mental breakdown, before finally becoming president and reshaping a nation. Rejection didn't destroy them. It defined them, because every no trained them for the moment when their yes finally came. The everyday version. But this isn't just about famous names. It's about you, the college graduate in Boston who finally applies for the role he thought was out of reach, and gets it. The single mom in Atlanta who finally pitches her business idea to a local investor, and hears yes. The worker in Chicago who finally speaks up in the meeting and earns unexpected respect. None of these wins happen without first risking rejection. Without daring to hear no, you'll never get to yes. Machiavelli's final word. Machiavelli lived in a ruthless world, but his insights endure because human nature hasn't changed. He saw that rulers keep people on a leash by exploiting their fear of rejection. He also saw that the few who cut that leash rise above the crowd. The one who fears no rejection cannot be controlled. That's the line you need to etch into your mind, because every time you act without fear of no, you reclaim control. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to manipulate. You stop living on scraps of approval. Your challenge. So here's what I want you to do. Stop waiting for perfect timing. Stop hiding behind comfort. This week, deliberately put yourself in the path of rejection. Apply for the job that intimidates you. Call the client you think will probably say no. Walk up to the person you're interested in and start the conversation. Share the idea in class or in the meeting that you've been sitting on. Do it not because you need the yes, but because you need the practice. Every no you collect makes you stronger. Every rejection you face makes you freer. The mindset shift. The next time someone rejects you, don't say, "I failed." Say instead, "They revealed themselves." They revealed their limitations. They revealed their lack of vision. They revealed that they weren't ready for what you had to offer. And that revelation is a gift. It saves you from wasting your energy where it doesn't belong. The final choice. At the end of the day, there are only two kinds of people. The first group, those who let rejection dictate their lives. They fear it. They avoid it. They obey it. These people remain small, safe, forgettable. The second group, those who face rejection, embrace it, and even seek it. These are the ones who rise. They're not controlled by other people's opinions. They write their own rules. They live boldly, dangerously, memorably. Which group will you choose to be in? Call to action. If this video opened your eyes, do 3 things right now. 1. Hit the like button, because algorithms reject weak content. and your click proves this message matters. 2. Share this with someone you know is trapped by fear of rejection. Be the one who hands them the key to their cage. 3. Subscribe for more Machiavellian insights, because the journey doesn't end here. And finally, drop this in the comments. My greatest rejection trained me for my greatest victory. Write it, own it, declare it. Because once you see rejection as your training ground, you stop fearing it forever. Closing note. The world is full of doors. Most people never touch the handles because they're terrified of hearing. No, they live their entire lives staring at closed doors, convincing themselves it's safer that way. But you now know the secret. Rejection isn't the lock, it's the key. Every no you face brings you closer to the door that opens. And the moment you stop fearing rejection, you stop waiting for permission. You stop asking to be chosen. You choose yourself. And when you do that, you stop surviving and you start ruling.